Today's guest is someone whose life story reads like it was written for the screen, except it's real, it's raw, and it's deeply relevant to every woman in this community. LJ Kennealy spent over 3 decades in the Royal Australian Air Force, rising to wing commander, becoming a gender advisor to the Chief of Air Force, and then taking her expertise all the way to the United Nations in New York, where she worked as a military liaison officer to the UN Women, focused on getting more women into peacekeeping operations globally. She's been deployed to Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria. She's sat at tables that most of us will never see, advocating for women in some of the most challenging environments on earth. And now she's in a completely new chapter, working as an international consultant in women, peace, and security, and sitting on the board of the Women's Veterans Australia. LJ, what I love the most about getting to chat to you is that you're a mate. We are
Yeah,
members of the same RSL, and yeah, I have the deepest respect for all you've done for women and continue to do. So welcome.
thank you, Jen. I have the same amount of respect, but right back at you.
Thank you. Well, let's jump in first. You're a Tassie girl. You're from the Tarkine, from Takanya. You joined the Air Force in 1990.
hmm
Looking back, what was it that really made you go, I'm going to join the Air Force?
Wow, yeah, that's a really good question because I don't think I really had a plan. It was my mum, and I think because my mum grew up in northwest Tasmania as well, as did my dad, and I think mum kind of recognised that in order for us to kind of achieve our full potential or seize all the opportunities that she would love us to seize, that we needed to kind of fly the nest because opportunities, as if anyone's been to northwest Tasmania, it's a beautiful country, it's beautiful, but there's not a lot of I guess opportunities to kind of really do the work that I've done. Certainly no opportunity to join the military from there. And I think mum saw it as an opportunity and encouraged it. And also we weren't really well off enough to for me to go away to university and we couldn't really afford that. So it was an opportunity and yeah, it was mum that kind of pushed me that way.
Go, Mum. Well, you are from one of the most special parts of the world that I think, and I 100% intend to run women's retreats down there in the Tarkine in the future. So it's a very special part of the world. Yeah, love it.
Certainly is.
So you've spent decades as the person pushing for women's inclusion in the military. What did it cost you personally to be that voice in culture, in that culture, predominantly man, men dominated?
Yeah, that's a kind of a really interesting question because I think over time it's changed. So when I joined the military in 1990, I joined as a enlisted person and I was 18 and I left home. And again, I was sort of, I wouldn't say I lived in a sheltered childhood, but it was certainly one where I hadn't been exposed to kind of an adult learning environment or an adult environment. So joining the Air Force at 18 and being exposed to a really diverse group of people and diverse group of ages was a real eye opener for me. And I think early on in my career, I really didn't have a voice. It was it was challenging for young women. And if you didn't feel empowered to speak up, like you could find yourselves in some pretty awkward or some pretty difficult situations. And I think it's that experience that kind of shaped my what would you call it, my passion for making it better for younger women and women who are serving as they're coming through. But it was in 2001 when I commissioned, and the reason I commissioned was twofold. Was one, because the job I was in, the category I was in, was changing, but two, I kind of recognised I wanted to have more of a voice in the organisation. I really wanted to kind of take that step into leadership, and part of that was, being able to kind of shape policy, shape programs, and try and kind of work the space as best I could. But it wasn't until about 2012 where I really found myself in the gender space. And again, that was on the back of the Broderick Review, the review into the treatment of women in the ADF. And that review in itself was really polarising in defence. So being kind of put on the team within Air Force to respond to that was a both a blessing and a curse, if you like, because it was a blessing in terms of thank goodness we've got this review. It's amazing. It's grounded in women's lived experience. It was a very comprehensive review and had some really thorough recommendations, which many of us, my colleagues, peers, and women and men across the ADF kind of contributed to. But the flip side of that, or the downside of that, was the organisational backlash that came with that. So despite having, the most senior leadership kind of sitting behind the implementation of that program of work, it was still very much a male-dominated workforce that you had to negotiate with, you had to kind of plead with, you had to kind of change your approaches just to get, even sometimes just to get the opportunity to have a conversation. And that became pretty harsh, pretty tricky. And I guess, and what I saw organisationally was a willingness to kind of allow that kind of male backlash or that organisational backlash to then kind of take some of the sting out of the report. So take some of the motivation for the leadership to actually implement some of those recommendations for fear of how the workforce would respond. So from a policy and programming point of view, that was really tricky. From a personal point of view, I think throughout my career, I've had really great experiences, but I've also had some really difficult experiences. And what I like about, what I've enjoyed about working in this space, even in more recent years, is that whilst I don't talk publicly in great detail about my experiences, what I can do is listen to other women, understand their experiences, and really try and advocate for women organisationally and globally. I think the biggest challenge, and one of the things that I love talking about now that I'm out of defence, is that I'm the chair of Women Veterans Australia. I feel very empowered now that I'm not in defence, because I can use my voice, I can use my influence, and I can use my skills and knowledge, which I have a lot of in this space, and I can talk to whoever I want. I'm not constrained by a hierarchy within defence, which was predominantly male when I was working in that space. So that's really empowering, and I think for me that's also a little bit of therapy, right? Because I am able to kind of take things that little bit further, sit down with people and spend the time and have the conversations with, with the people that have the real power to make decisions. So I think that's, did that answer your question?
Yeah, and in fact, probably the next 3 questions. I've got one little piece. Fucking hell, go, woman. I love it.
Sorry.
Oh, you're killing the list.
Ask me the questions, I'll answer again so that we get some more question answer.
No, I totally love it. I am curious. How was it? Because that would have taken huge courage while you were in the military. You knew you needed to use your voice, and women, put in situations all the time. They know they need to use their voice, and the courage it takes. How did you tap into that to be able to do it, knowing that all these guys are feeling threatened by this report and stuff?
Yeah, well, and I will say too, some women were also really, really threatened by the report. So, I mean, I'm sure you've heard about it before on your podcast, where sometimes there's kind of a few different types of women, and you've got the women who, drop the ladder down and bring everyone up with them, and you've got other women that pull the ladder up and don't bring the women up, and defence is no different in that respect. So there were some women, and I understand that they have that approach because they've had to navigate a really tricky space as well.
Sure.
And they want to protect where they are in their career, and people would openly say that working on gender or working on women's things in defence is a career killer. Right. So, you don't win prizes. You don't win lollies for working on gender in the military. I can tell you that. So it does take a lot of kind of determination, but it also, it's once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
And I've even had, I've got good, strong men that I've worked with, men in my life, and when they actually take the time to listen and really kind of comprehend what the challenges are for women, then they see it, and then they can't unsee it either, and they become our best advocates. I think sometimes my experience in defence, and I won't tolerate this anymore, is that quite often I'll have a conversation with somebody and they'll be all for it and really supportive, but when I need them to be visually supportive or stand up or create space for me or other women to talk, that they don't do it. They fear doing that, and I don't have time for that anymore. And and that's one thing that I don't miss is spending time with people that are that I guess are just kind of paying lip service to it because they think they need to, or they might want something else. I think you just dig deep. You dig deep, and I wasn't the only one. Like I worked with some other amazing women, both in Air Force and Navy and Army, and some of the civilian women working in defence too. So there was a good group of women, but again, constrained at the level we were in terms of trying to push stuff through. And defence is a really complex organisation, like any major government department. And there's stovepipes, and so there's not one solution. So you've got to work the room, but the room's massive, if you like, and it's just tiring and challenging. But I think it comes from a real commitment to the agenda. And you do see results. I mean, I did some wonderful stuff and saw some great results, which I loved.
Can you share one of your favourite results?
Yeah, so one of the really cool things when I was in charge of gender programs in Air Force, we ran these what we called at the time flight camps, and we designed this 1 week program because within Air Force we were looking to increase women's participation in like non-traditional roles. So through an Air Force lens, that is aviation, technical engineering type roles. So we kind of came up with this 1 week course, if you like, where we brought in young women initially aged 16 to 18, and then we expanded at 16 to 24, who had never really considered a career in Air Force. But, we advertised it out through the schools and everything, and we had some parameters around it. But we ended up picking I think it was about 12 girls for each camp that we did. And we brought them onto the base. So their parents had to get them to the front gate of the base. And then I took responsibility for them with my team, who were fantastic. And for a week, we put them in flight suits. I created a campaign called Air Force Women Defying Gravity, and we got patches and everything made up. And
oh, God, I would have loved that.
Yes, very cool. I'll send you a patch. I think I still got some floating around.
Oh, yeah,
But the key thing was that it was experiential, right? So we didn't bring these young women in and go, all right, here's a lecture on this, like death by PowerPoint. We actually, there were times when we went to East Sale for a camp, like they went flying with the roulettes. So they all went up individually and flew. And another time we flew from Melbourne to Tassie on a C-17. And so they got to fly, they got to go on the fire trucks. But most importantly, like we brought an advocate cadet with us, so someone young that they could engage with. And I had a pilot, an engineer, a flight sergeant in my team, and it was all women. And so we created this really permissive environment for these young women to be able to ask any question, and get to the real crux of, what it's like being in the Air Force. We slept on base, we ate on base, did lots of fun stuff. And the best thing about that program, apart from the young women and hanging out and doing all that cool stuff, was then we had a cohort, right? We had a cohort of women over the course of 12 months. I think we probably ran 4 a year or something, so like 28, 30 women and young women. And then if they applied to recruiting, which we knew had barriers to women's, there's just kind of biases and things. Someone in my team was mentoring these young women. So if they had a barrier, they would let us know, and then we could examine the barrier and see if it was a fair barrier or was a bias. So we were able to kind of intervene. And over time, like we got rid of, like there was a psychological test that both men and women had to do, and it was about spatial awareness. And the women were disproportionately doing poorly, compared to the men, were doing worse than the men. And so we put in a kind of an intervention that if the women had passed everything else and that test was the only barrier to them progressing, that we would progress them anyway. And over time, that test just got taken away for everybody because it was proven not to be a good test. So it was really labour intensive, but it was like this tiny little research project that helped us find all these barriers along the way. Some unconscious and some conscious, and that was. I love that. I love that work.
And so cool, so satisfying.
Yeah, and that model's still going now. Like they're still running that, and it's been adopted internationally. And I think from memory, we went, and don't quote me on this, but I think about 2013, 14, we went from a recruitment of about 2.4% women pilots to about 13% or something, so it had a whether it was just the camps or the the publicity and everything that went with it, because there was obviously a lot of other stuff that we were doing, but yeah, we did see a big increase, and I'm really proud of that. And it was innovative. Defence is not known for being
Totally.
particularly innovative unless they're buying something shiny like a plane or a boat or a ship, I should say. Sorry,
You're a
Army.
Navy girl. Same.
Yeah.
Boats. Okay, that's epic. Gosh, I would have died happy if I'd been a teenager part of that.
Yeah, it was
That's
so much
seriously
fun.
cool. I
And
love
they're
it.
amazing, amazing young
Yeah.
women. Like the young women that are coming through, like, everyone bagging on the new generation, like they were just fantastic and
Mm,
excited and motivated and bright, so it was good.
cool. Cool. So when you were deployed in conflict zones, because you've done Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, which are pretty damn interesting countries for women anyway, and then you go there as a gender advisor, what did you witness about women's resilience that you did, again, see but can't unsee, that you really remember?
Yeah. So Afghanistan, I only went to Afghanistan for it was a very short trip. I actually went over there with the Sex Discrimination Commissioner, took her over there, and it was an amazing trip because we got to sit down with the women that were working directly with the police in Afghanistan, the women police that were helping the women escape violence and things like that. And listening to their stories and listening to the challenges that the women had a profound effect on us, but we weren't as surprised as, I guess, a couple of the male commanders that were with us on this trip. And I saw a shift in the response of I think he was a Major General. I can't remember his rank, I'm sorry. But I saw the penny drop, like when he was hearing these stories firsthand. But then I also got to go out and meet the women that we were training as part of the Afghan National Academy. So, and they were, again, very inspiring. They're really brave women.
Mm,
Some of them would, said that, talking about their experiences and saying that even their neighbours didn't know what they were doing for fear of being, told that the neighbours telling the Taliban where they were and stuff. So these women were really putting themselves out there to try and like have a stake, have some agency in protecting and making their country more secure. And that was just incredible. And I think, I was working for UN Women in 2020 when the Afghan withdrawal happened. It was heartbreaking, right? And certainly some of my friends were over there as gender advisors for a longer period of time, and definitely heartbreaking for anyone, I think, who'd spent time with those
mm,
women. And just, recognizing that, you know, we couldn't get them, they wouldn't all be able to get out. They would have to, destroy their records, and now they're back under Taliban rule. And it's kind of like I struggle a little bit with that. We've kind of give hope, then we take it away. And that kind of mirrors a little bit of what my experience in Iraq and Syria was as well. Like I loved the work that I did there. Um, and I was working for the coalition, so it was a US-led coalition, and we were there to defeat ISIS or degrade ISIS, which is a very important mission, of course. But working within the coalition, trying to kind of again bring a military on board with understanding human security and what the impacts of the conflict on women and children and men, like the whole population, but particularly the women, but also trying to kind of educate the command and whatnot about how women have the continuum of agency for women in those regions is huge. But apart from that, it was good. Like I had to fight for my seats. Like I could tell you another story where I walked into a room as the only woman and doing a briefing to the commander who was in another location at the time, and I walked in and I looked around and everyone has name tags. I had a briefing slot. A lot of people didn't. And I found my seat as the gender advisor in the very back corner of the room. And there were people around the table who were of a lower rank, male, and didn't have a briefing slot. Anyway, so I just sat there. And then when it was my time to do the brief, and I think I'd been there about 5 months by this stage, so I'd pretty much like lost my biscuits at times. I picked up my chair, like Shirley Chisholm style, and like just dragged it to the table and plopped it down. And the man, the fellow running the meeting, just kind of looked at me, and I just sat there and gave my brief. Then I
Good on
finished
you.
and picked my chair up, took it back to the corner. I just went, yeah.
Ah,
I don't know. I think I would never. I don't think I would ever have done that in Australia, but over there, I just think I'd lost. I'm just like, oh God, like I'm over here away from my family. We're getting rocketed. It's I'd rather be anywhere else, and no one's listening. So I'm just going to create this space and run with it. So yeah,
I love that you did it. That's
yeah,
huge.
yeah.
And that's, gosh, that mirrors so much of just where life is in the West at the moment, that we need to take our place at the table because they're not going to bloody let us in.
No, they don't give it, and
No.
frankly, it's you can sort of see it's backsliding in places, and I think that's really sad. And it's wonderful that like on the weekend, like with Women Veterans Australia, we just kind of held an Anzac Day event with the New South Wales Swifts, and they were playing the New South Wales Giants. And I've been reflecting on that over the last couple of days, and just what a positive environment that was. And yes, commemorating Anzac Day was wonderful to do it that way, but it was more about these women's organisations coming together and recognising that we just have to, there's strength in numbers, and there's so much commonality around challenges and things like that. So sometimes that fills my cup. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and the other stuff that does feel like we're sliding back day by day at the moment in the world, which is all what motivates me to really want to document stories like your own. At the same time, we have to keep helping make happen these other things to help balance it out and to help ensure that we don't slide back so far. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Well, you're doing
love
your
it.
best there in your podcast.
Oh,
I can
we
tell you
all
that.
are.
Your
We
work,
all are.
it's fantastic.
So you spent time at the UN, UN Women in New York, and
Yeah.
you were working at the intersection of the military power and women's rights. This blows my brain. Was there a moment when those two worlds felt completely,
Yeah, like inconceivable that they would
yeah, even
be
that,
able to.
yeah?
Yeah, yeah. Like there were times. I think what I will say is the first week I worked there at UN Women, I was like, this is amazing, because I walked into work and I, number one, didn't have to defend my job. I didn't have to say, oh, yeah, I'm here about women, because everyone's about women. So it was fantastic. So that was a really good starting point. For UN Women, they don't normally have military people in UN Women because those agendas don't really align.
Mm,
But we do know that when women participate in peace processes or participate in peacekeeping, there's a better outcome of resolution. And, it's better for the community that peacekeeping forces reflect the community. So they certainly work in that, kind of in that space about giving women agency to have a stake in their own peace and security. That's really important. It's kind of like why some of us probably join the military, because we want to have a stake in our own security and the peace of our own country. And women in the global south are the same, right? And also there's a economic benefit to serving in the military, in some militaries. So that aspect was really good. But without a doubt, like, to get traction from a military point of view, you have to work with the Department of Peace Operations, which is a very is a military organisation as part of the UN, and very hierarchical. And of course, it's the employees within that organisation are from all the member states. So what you have then is a group of people working in organisation, or working towards strengthening and delivering on peace operations, but all coming from very different places in terms of their understanding about women in the military.
mm.
They're not that I like the word belief, because gender equality is not a religion, but they don't believe in gender equality, or they don't think women should be doing these roles. And so that in itself presents some challenges. But again, within that DPI construct, there are some really fantastic women that are working hard, and men, to try and increase that participation. And it's a really slow burn. It's a really slow burn. We're really lucky that it's amazing that Major General Cheryl Pearce is currently the acting head of peacekeeping at the Department of Peace Operations. She was the
Way cool.
deputy head for a while, and
Aussie.
and the head had to go back to his country for a political position, and so Cheryl's been acting in that position for a while, and like I love that. I mean, visibility matters, and like
Yeah.
having a woman, having a strong woman, and yes, go Aussie, like leading that is really powerful. I think because of that, that kind of the member state kind of makeup of of department is, it's good to see women in those kind of leadership roles to help kind of shift thinking. But
Mm.
yeah, it was an amazing posting. I mean, COVID happened while we were there, so I think I was only there a month and COVID hit, so that was challenging. But I also got to go to like Central Asia, like Kazakhstan, Georgia, which I loved. And I often tell the story about Georgia. Like Georgia, has shares a border with Russia, right?
Yeah,
And
totally.
sitting kind of up in northern Georgia, so almost like near the Russian border, doing like a workshop with their military and men and women. And I was blown away because the discussion around gender equality and women's participation was far more mature than what I would say it sometimes is in Australia. It was only like last week or the week before when Major General Susan Coyle, or Lieutenant General Susan Coyle, was announced as the next Chief of
Yeah,
Army.
the shit that's
And
gone through that.
yeah, the backlash and the toxic rubbish that was coming out. When I reflect on those kind of discussions in Georgia, who do have areas of their country are currently occupied by Russia, and I think they had a war there in 2011, 2012. Their attitude is like, we need anyone who is capable of protecting our country to man, woman, we don't care. As long as they are here and they're willing to fight, we want them. We want to create an environment. And that's not to say that women don't struggle and, aren't still fighting for, you know, um, more opportunities or, getting promoted is equal and things like that. But at the very crux of it, their community and their, the broader community and the military community recognise that they need everybody to have a stake in it. And I think, that's one of the things I talk about a lot now from a woman veteran's point of view is like, we just got to shift this narrative, right? Like, the, you're foolish if you think you can, maintain a military and you only have it from 50% of the population. Like, that's just ridiculous. And certainly you're not going to have a very talented workforce if you drill down on one side and forget the whole other 50% of the population, which are women. And I think in Australia, we still have a way to go with that, which, is a real shame.
It's interesting. I do a lot of work up in Asia and China in particular. And Mao said, women hold up half the sky. See communism for whatever it is. But you know what?
I love that.
You're right.
Yeah.
I do too. I think it's the coolest saying. We hold up half the sky.
Yeah. And there's a really good book. There's a book. I can't remember who the author is, but there's actually a book. I read it years ago, but it's called that. Like, and it's
Ah, cool.
fantastic. Yeah, yeah. Sorry, that wasn't very helpful, was it? Because I
No,
just
yeah,
don't know.
I will research and find it. But
Yeah.
I
But
love
yeah,
it.
I love
And
that saying. It's true.
I do too. I'd never heard it until I was in China, and my translator there, she's so proud that yeah, they do. They're in their culture. Women are, and they still have all just guys at the top. However, yeah, it's an equal playing field. It's
Yeah,
different. Yeah. So you did 30 years in
yeah.
uniform.
Mhm.
What actually happened to your sense of self, do you think, when the institution was no longer defining you? That's a long time and that's a big transition. How's that been?
Yeah, like it's interesting. I think for me, because I had my last posting was 3 years at UN Women, so I sort of had a bit of a slow transition out. But I felt disconnected from defence, and my before I went to UN Women, I finished my deployment, so I didn't really go back to work until I deployed, which was only like a month or 2 months. So after my deployment, I came home, and then we went to New York. I think I've definitely grieved. It gave me so many opportunities and so many good relationships, so many good friends, so many positive experiences. Um, but I think what I saw, what I experienced on my deployment, then what I kind of, that more global lens I was, so privileged to get when I was working at UN Women, just was enough for me to go, I've, I've, I've done my job here. I can't, there's nothing left for me to give here. The work that I'm doing now, I think kind of fills my cup enough to be able to say, well, and I do see a psychologist, and she's like, when I talk to her, and she's kind of like, I still, it feels like you've still got some itches to scratch, LJ. So this is good for you. And I'm like, yeah. And I like it. As I said before, I find it more empowering that I can kind of
say more outside. Yeah.
cut through all that nonsense. And, and I think a lot of it is fear. People fear putting their head up above the parapet, and saying something, or, advocating for women more than what they do. And I think that's really disappointing, because I think we could we could progress a lot faster if people didn't fear that kind of backlash or popping it if they, support women more.
Well,
and it's definitely changed from when I joined. Like, oh my gosh, it's a different organisation.
I see it wildly different to when I joined, 40 years ago, 47 years ago.
100%.
So with that, the military, it's famous. It's structure, it's hierarchy, it's rules. And not just women, men too, conditioned to say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Well, and that's right.
What do you think have you had to do any unconditioning of that since you got out?
Yes, definitely. You definitely do get indoctrinated. And I think, and we know this about women veterans, particularly, when you join, and like when you joined and when I joined, like, and it's still the same today. It's probably not quite as bad, but, you have to assimilate, right? Because you're a minority, and, it's team first, individual second. So to kind of survive, but to survive, you kind of, you might have to like kind of suppress some of your feminine characteristics, or, suppress your true identity and kind of change the way you operate. And I found myself doing that throughout my career. Like, I found myself choosing, or, self-deselecting to do things because of the circumstances that I might find myself in. So as a woman, there were times when I would protect myself by not, I don't know if I'm making sense, but yeah.
I know you are. I'm ex-military, so I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. And
so not putting your hand up to do certain roles or things.
Oh, yeah, or just even being in an environment where I wouldn't necessarily feel safe. And this was particularly when I was young. So I, again, you do all you can to kind of fit in, but then it's like, well, I'm still different, and, I don't want to be too visible, because that attracts attention that you might not want. And that was particularly my experience when I was young. And so, yeah, you suppress your identity a little bit. And then when you get to the end and you don't have to do that anymore, you're like, oh, I'm out the other side now, and I'm getting back into the civilian world, and, you find yourself again, if you like, to a certain extent. Yeah, and I do think, I do think sometimes there's just stuff that you have to do that you kind of, the older you get, you're kind of like, come on.
Oh, it's the best. Estrogen drops, and so we don't have that obligation. It's true. It's a physiological change in our body. Our body wires differently. We don't have that obligation to nurture, to do right, to be the good girl. We will go, fuck you. It's real. It's real as we age.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, it's good. And I think I think I'm still navigating that a little bit. Yeah.
That would be well and truly expected for anyone. You stayed within the system for 30 years. A system that told you how to show up and how to do your thing. And I love it.
Yeah.
You're a little badass. So let's talk Women's Veterans Australia. So they've got their Phoenix program. I did some research. That kind of idea of rising from the ashes of service. Do you think there's a kind of grief that comes with leaving that life that you did? Because it has so much purpose, serving. Although now you're doing consultancy and things on the outside.
Yeah, so I lead Women Veterans.
Yeah.
So I'm the chair of that, and we came up with the Phoenix program because it was like, well, we've got 5 things that we look at, but the Phoenix program is what we kind of offer to women veterans. It's kind of veteran facing immediate kind of thing. And it's really based around that transition space. And you kind of touched on it before, like when you leave service and you lose your identity. And because once you leave defence, like the door shuts. It's not like it's a, come back anytime, have a cup of tea. It's, but you still have all your mates and things like that. But
and you have the RSL as a structure.
yeah,
And
so
like
there's an environment there, but you're not defence anymore. And I think depending on how you leave service, so if you choose to leave and you've got something to go to, well, then that's one pathway. If you choose to leave and you're not sure what you're going to do, that's another pathway. And, we can intervene there or offer help there. And there's plenty of things around that we can do in that space. And then you've got the other group, which are those that leave because of something that might have happened to them in service. So, so they might be medically discharged or involuntarily medically discharged. And that's the cohort that really, kind of came through in the Royal Commission, that women veterans are twice as likely to commit suicide as their civilian counterparts. Women veterans who are involuntarily discharged are 5 times more likely to commit suicide than their civilian counterparts.
So that's huge.
Yeah, so that's huge. And we're not talking massive numbers, but as a cohort, that's when you talk about male suicide, it's huge. But yeah, it is big, and it's an area that needs a lot of attention. And I think organisations like Women Veterans Australia, recognise that there's a gap, right? So we've come out of defence, and militaries worldwide are built on through a male lens, male structure, because that's historically how they were. And even in the ADF, women were restricted from service. Back in the day, if you got pregnant, you had to get out. If you got married, you had to get out. If you couldn't serve in certain roles, slowly, incrementally, roles got opened up. And, in 2016, that was the final step where all roles in the ADF were open to women. So it's taken till 2016 to get to that stage. So you can only kind of extrapolate from that then all the systems, the policies and the processes that sit behind what we do all in that male lens. And it takes time. And, that's some of the work that when we're working in post the Broderick Review and in defence on gender, that's some of the work that we're trying to do. And that takes a long time. Some of it shouldn't, but it does. And so I think Women Veterans Australia we shine a light on that. We shine a light really on those systemic gaps, particularly in transition. So with services that are already out there, we've got some great organisations out there. Now we've got the RSL, we've got Legacy, we've got, Soldier On. There's all these wonderful ESOs that have stood up. But I think they're slowly starting to catch on that the veteran population is more diverse than that traditional male fighting, that male kind of stereotype that we see. And that stereotype is reinforced all the time, right, in society. Like us, you could walk into a primary school and sit down with a group of, grade 2 students and say, describe someone who's in the army.
It'd be a bloke.
It'd be a bloke, right? So it's there's a whole, we kind of focus a lot internally on defence and in the veteran community, but there's a whole community piece that needs to happen there to help people understand. And when we start doing that, then we'll see that some of these organisations or interventions or even health providers, civilian health providers, have a greater understanding of the diverse population of veterans, men and women, Indigenous, CALD, and are able to kind of make sure that no one's slipping through the gaps, and that if we need a program specifically for women veterans, which we do, particularly like trauma, PTSD, we do need some specific programs around that in Australia, like that. That's what we're kind of advocating for, to kind of fill those gaps. So we don't want to replicate stuff that's already there. So the new national president of the RSL, Peter Tingley, he's been really proactive in a lot of these spaces, and I've had a number of meetings with him about, and some of other colleagues, about how do we be more kind of gender responsive, which I find really amazing. And we work, it's great. Like if they want to have us at the table to help out with that or to work hand in hand with that, that's good for Women Veterans Australia, because then we don't have to carry the load, and the better outcome for the whole veteran community. Because quite frankly, I don't think there's many gender equality strategies out there, even though they get a lot of back push from the male part of the community. Most of them benefit people, everyone. Generally speaking, they're just more friendly policies. So that's the Phoenix program. So we at the moment we're running a entrepreneurial program for women veterans in New South Wales. So women veterans, we got a grant from New South Wales Government Office for Women, and we're running this entrepreneurial program. So if you want to start a small business or you want to kind of enhance your small business, it's a kind of a mentored but specific program, and that's underway at the moment. Earlier in the year, we did some micro grants. Sorry, last year we did some micro grants for women. And then the other big piece of work that we're doing at the moment is a campaign called Shadows to Spotlight. And that's funded through a grant from DVA through the health and wellbeing grants. And that's really getting to the crux of, putting that visibility light on women veterans. And we're creating videos. We're doing things like the netball last week. We're trying to get more opportunities to come and speak about women veterans, because again, we need funding, and so much of the funding goes to the traditional big ESIs or veteran support organisations. And we're like, what about us? Can we please get some funding?
Yeah, totally.
And to deliver on some of these things that have been identified as being gaps in the veteran kind of support space for women. And, and I think it's really critical to have women only spaces. Not everyone needs that, but certainly, if anyone's kind of experienced violence or trauma, I mean, in the civilian community, we wouldn't put men and women together if, there had been violence. So certainly from a veteran space, we need to create spaces where women feel safe. And of course, women like to connect as well. So even creating spaces where women can connect is really important. And our the other really good women's organisation out there at the moment, Women Veteran Network Association, we work quite closely with them now, and they provide that kind of local catch-up, coffees, lunches, and that they have a really active kind of socials page, and you see, groups of women getting together and, not necessarily talking about their service, but their service is their piece of commonality, and that's what brings them together. And then they, get to talk about grandkids and jobs or whatever it is they talk about. It's amazing. Yeah.
It's all connection.
And I love that. I love that. Yeah, I think that's amazing.
And it's important. Well, I love that you're the queen of that at the moment. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not the queen of it all, but yeah, it's, it takes a village, right, with everything. Like it just, but there's some really motivated, terrific women out there that are kind of, and we work together, and it's, it's hard work, it's busy, it's unpaid, but it's rewarding, and we've worked hard. We've got a seat at the table now. Like that was when I took over as chair, that was my first thing. It's like, I've got enough experience to know, and I've seen enough to know that if you don't have a seat at the table, well, then you'll only ever be able to work at this level. And I'm really grateful to say that we do have a seat at the table now, and we're very much helping with policy development and whatnot, post the Royal Commission recommendations, and our voices are heard, and which I think is great.
Love it. So if you are listening to this and are a women's veteran or know a woman who served, check below. Doesn't matter if you're listening to this on one of the podcast platforms like Apple or Spotify, or whether you're on YouTube, wherever. I will put the links to Women's Veterans Australia below. So share that with the person who needs to know. So just wrapping this up to respect your time, you are totally now, by any definition, a present-day wise woman. What is living?
I feel privileged.
You are. You get my tick, chick. You really get my tick. What does living as a woman in your power look like to you in any given day?
Oh, I think being able to kind of live your truth. I think feeling like you don't have to justify your space anymore. You can create your space, and you can choose. Like Uh, and I think, yeah, going after the things that matter to you, and the things that you value. And I'm still kind of finding my way, but I think having your own agency and you're coming out of the military, having your own agency is a really, really powerful thing. And I think surrounding yourself with people that lift you up, I think that's really important. I think friendships are amazing, but you can also outgrow friendships. Not that I really have, but I know you can. And I think it's important to make sure that the people you spend time with and the people that you let into your circle are there to build you up, and you're there to build them up as well and to support them. I think that's really critical. I have very little tolerance for people that bring other people down. I've seen enough of that, and I don't like it. I really love a positive environment, and actually really just love hanging out with other women and talking to other women and hearing other people's stories. And if I can helping, or if they can help me, that's even better. Like that kind of stuff. Yeah, I
love
think,
it.
yeah.
I love it. So, with the wisdom that you have today, this is the last question. What would you, if you had the opportunity to go back to your 18-year-old self, what would you whisper in her ear?
Oh, I think I say, you've got this. It's going to be hard, but you'll make it. I don't think I'd whisper, don't do it, and I think I'd like to say that I would be able to have more of a voice when I was younger. I'm not great. Even today, I'm not great at advocating for myself as much as I am at advocating for other people. So, yeah, I think it would be like, you've got this, and take the opportunities that come your way. Don't shy away. If a door gets open, go through it. Because when I got put into the team post the Broderick review, I was kind of like, here we go. This is going to be, but that just created this whole new world for me. And, at 18, I had no idea. I got to recruits, Jan, and it took me 4 weeks to ring home because I couldn't spend the time in the line for the phone box because I was so useless. So it was more like, yeah, you've got this. You just got to get through some of these challenges and then take the opportunities as they come. And yeah, things will get there. Not everything's, you know, life throws you some major curveballs and it's awful. But again, if you make sure you surround yourself with the right people, and I've got an amazing family, husband, and kids, children, and I think that's what I'd say. Just stick with it. Stick with it. You'll be surprised where you end up. I think everyone's surprised where I ended up.
Well, I love
My
where you
friends and
ended
I are
up,
all
and I
surprised where we
love,
all end up.
oh, LJ, I love what you've done for women around the world through the roles that you've had, and that you are out now and can just do even more, but in the way that you choose to do it without those constraints. So thank you for your service,
Thank you,
not
Jen. Thank
just
you
to
for
the
yours.
service, but thank you for your service to women.
Thank you.